30 minutes ago, Iran lost its most powerful weapon, and most of the world has no idea it happened. Not a missile, not a warship, not a bomb. A 50-year strategic card. The one card that has allowed a country smaller than Portugal's economy to hold the entire global oil supply hostage. Gone. And what replaced it is something no military on Earth has ever deployed before. Stay with me, because what happened in the Strait of Hormuz in the last 72 hours rewrites every assumption you have about modern warfare, economic power, and what America is actually capable of. Hit that like button right now if this is the kind of story you want more of daily, because we break these developments every single day. Here is the card Iran has held since 1979. 21 miles. That is the width of the Strait of Hormuz at its narrowest point. 2 shipping lanes, each barely 2 miles wide, through which 17 to 21 million barrels of oil flow every single day. 1/5 of the world's entire oil supply, squeezed through a gap of water that Iran controls the northern shore of. Iran never needed to actually close the strait to make this card work. The threat alone was enough. Every American president who ever considered military action against Iran's nuclear program had to stop and calculate the strait card. Every Israeli prime minister, every Gulf state leader. The threat of mining those lanes, of unleashing Iran's fast boat swarms, of activating its coastal defense network, that threat alone was sufficient to freeze the decision-making of the most powerful military alliance on Earth for 5 straight decades. And before you wonder where this is heading, the answer is going to change how you think about Iran, China, and every military standoff happening right now. Keep watching. The shift did not happen overnight. It began with a decision made weeks ago at the highest level of American military command, and that decision came down to a single conceptual breakthrough. Stop treating the Strait of Hormuz as a transit problem and start treating it as a domain control problem. Most people who cover this conflict have missed this distinction entirely, and it is the entire story. A transit problem asks, how do we get specific ships through safely? You answer that with escorts, with minesweepers, with naval convoys. That is tactical. A domain control problem asks something fundamentally different. How do we make the entire strait operationally transparent to American forces and simultaneously operationally blind for Iranian forces? That is strategic. And the answer is a system that has never existed anywhere in the world before this moment. A fully integrated, multi-domain, AI-assisted surveillance and denial architecture covering every square mile of the Strait of Hormuz simultaneously. Not a weapon. A network. 3 layers operating in parallel, feeding a composite operational picture that updates every 4 seconds. Start at the bottom. Distributed autonomous underwater vehicles. Small, battery-powered, acoustically near-silent, are seated across the seafloor of the strait in overlapping coverage patterns across every viable shipping lane and approach route. Each one is a sensor node. Acoustic sensors that distinguish the specific engine signature of an IRGC fast boat from a commercial tanker, from a submarine, from a vessel deploying a mine in real time. Magnetic anomaly detectors that identify metallic objects on or near the seafloor. Pressure sensors that capture the hydrodynamic wake of vessels transiting overhead. These nodes communicate through encrypted acoustic modems, transmitting compressed data packets that Iran's sonar systems cannot distinguish from the ambient noise of the ocean. The data aggregates upward to the surface layer. Unmanned autonomous surface vessels, ranging from personal watercraft-sized platforms to patrol boat-class units, operating in distributed formation across the strait with no crew, no human thermal signature, no predictable radio communication pattern. These are not passive collectors. Their electronic warfare suites are actively emitting, jamming Iranian radar at chosen frequencies, spoofing Iranian GPS navigation in specific grid squares, and flooding Iranian tracking systems with synthetic false contacts that consume operator attention and collapse decision-making capacity. Above them, the aerial layer. Low-altitude, persistent surveillance drones flying below the radar horizon that Iran's coastal defense systems were designed to cover, providing continuous visual, infrared, and electronic intelligence across every surface contact in the strait. 3 layers, every square mile, every 4 seconds. updated. Now, here is what that network actually took from Iran. And this is the part that no analyst covering this conflict has fully reckoned with yet. Iran's mine warfare strategy, the most feared element of its Hormuz threat for 4 decades, depends entirely on covert deployment. A small craft that looks like commercial traffic, moving through a shipping lane at night, slowing briefly, placing a mine, continuing on. The undersea sensor network makes that operation physically impossible. Every vessel entering the shipping lanes is being continuously tracked. Every course deviation is flagged. Every anomalous slowdown is detected. Every object that enters the water column above the sensor grid is captured acoustically within seconds. There is no night dark enough, no cover story convincing enough, no sea state rough enough to deploy a mine in a strait seeded with this sensor architecture without triggering an immediate automated alert. The fast boat swarm doctrine, the IRGC's signature tactic of appearing from multiple directions simultaneously to overwhelm a defending vessel's threat management, depends on surprise. The network eliminated surprise completely. Every IRGC fast boat is being tracked from the moment it leaves its berth. The network is reading its fuel state, monitoring its communication pattern, calculating its heading and operational range. By the time an IRGC swarm has formed and is moving toward a target, the network has had 40 minutes of continuous tracking data. The defending asset knows the composition, the heading, and the formation of the swarm before any individual boat is within its own radar range. Iran's diesel-electric submarine fleet, which had been a credible deterrent in the strait, precisely because shallow, acoustically complex water is notoriously difficult hunting ground, is now operating inside a seafloor-seated acoustic classification system that has the specific sound signatures of Iranian submarine classes programmed into its detection logic. They can move. They cannot move quietly enough. Not in this water column. Iran recognized within hours that something fundamental had changed. Reports flooded the IRGC Naval Command Operations Center. 17 simultaneous contacts with a phenomenon that no commander could classify, identify, or locate. The response came in 3 phases, and what happened in each phase is worth understanding, because it explains exactly how durable this system is. First, Iran activated its electronic warfare assets at elevated power, attempting to jam the network's operating frequencies. The result? The network's electronic intelligence collection systems captured the precise frequencies, power levels, and waveforms of every Iranian jamming system in the strait with complete fidelity. Iran's attempt to disrupt the network handed the network a perfect catalog of Iran's electronic warfare capability. Data that now feeds directly into the system's frequency selection, allowing it to operate specifically outside the range of every countermeasure Iran just revealed. Iran's first countermove made the network stronger. Second, surveillance drones were launched to visually locate the autonomous surface vessels that Iranian radar was struggling to track consistently. The network's aerial layer detected every drone before it reached the surface vehicle operating area. They were engaged and turned back. Iran learned nothing about the surface layer's composition, position, or coverage pattern. Third, IRGC fast boats were sent in a probing pattern toward the shipping lanes to locate the network's assets and assess its engagement response. The network had been tracking those boats since they left their berths. The response arrived before the probes reached the lanes. Direct, pre-authorized, immediate. 3 Iranian counterattempts. 3 complete failures. 3 data collection events that made the network's picture of Iranian capabilities more complete with every exchange. The asymmetry did not hold steady across those 72 hours. It deepened. The signal that told the world this was real did not come from a Pentagon briefing. It came from Lloyd's of London. War risk insurance premiums for Strait of Hormuz transit, which had reached levels that were making commercial shipping economically inviable, began declining within 24 hours of the network going fully operational. Insurance markets are the world's most sophisticated real-time risk assessment mechanism. When underwriters begin repricing Hormuz risk downward in the middle of an active confrontation, they are not reacting to press releases or political announcements. They are reacting to intelligence. Commercial shipping followed. Large crude carriers that had been rerouting around the Cape of Good Hope at enormous cost, sitting at anchor waiting for conditions to change, began transiting. Not a flood, a resumption. Cautious, measured, and real. And in the oil market, Brent crude began declining in the specific pattern that means the Hormuz risk premium is being repriced. $8 per barrel of risk premium reduced in 48 hours. At current global consumption rates, $8 per barrel multiplied across daily oil demand represents approximately $800 million per day of recovered economic value. Not from selling oil, from making the strait safe enough that the market stopped pricing in the probability of closure. $800 million per day. That is the measurable, concrete economic output of what the United States just deployed in 21 miles of water. Now step back from the strait for a moment, because the story that matters most here is not about Iran. Every military power that has spent the last 2 decades building asymmetric naval capabilities, cheap, numerous, fast, designed specifically to deny expensive conventional forces operational freedom, has been operating on one core assumption. Quantity and unpredictability defeat quality and cost. China in the South China Sea, Russia in the Baltic, North Korea. Every A2AD doctrine built to keep American carrier groups out of contested theaters has been constructed on that assumption. What America just demonstrated in the Strait of Hormuz is that the answer to cheap, numerous, asymmetric threats is not more expensive ships. It is a distributed, autonomous, AI-assisted network that covers the entire operational domain simultaneously, denies every asymmetric actor the situational awareness and operational freedom their doctrine requires, and gets better, not worse, every time the adversary tries to counter it. China's military planners are not watching what happened to Iran. They are watching what happened to the concept of asymmetric maritime harassment as a category of warfare. That is a different and far more consequential lesson. Which brings us to what this means for the one thing that has kept this confrontation from reaching its final act, the nuclear negotiation. Iran's entire posture at the table has rested on a simple deterrence calculation. You can threaten our facilities, but we can threaten your global economy. The Hormuz card was the mechanism behind that calculation. The network has not destroyed the card. Iran's mines are still in storage. Its fast boats are still at their berths. Its anti-ship missiles are still in their batteries. The physical capability exists, but capability without operational freedom to deploy it is not leverage. It is inventory. A weapon you cannot credibly use in the presence of a system that will detect it the moment you reach for it does not give you leverage over the people in the room. Iran's Hormuz card just moved from a playable deterrent to a last resort option. The difference between those two things is the difference between leverage and desperation. And every serious negotiator on both sides of the Islamabad talks knows exactly which side of that line Iran now sits on. The question that determines what comes next is the one Iran's leadership is asking internally right now. Is this network temporary? Does it go away if pressure eases? Or is this the new permanent operational reality of the strait? Because the answer to that question decides whether Iran negotiates from a recalibrated position or continues to play a hand that the table can now see through. The network does not have a recovery timeline on Iran's side. It collects more data every hour it operates. It refines its picture of Iranian signatures, positions, and response patterns continuously. It does not degrade, it improves. And as long as it is running, Iran's most powerful card sits face down on the table, visible to everyone in the room as exactly what it has become, unusable. If you want to understand what China's military planners are reading into this right now, that analysis drops tomorrow. Make sure you are subscribed so you do not miss it, and drop a comment below with the one question you want answered about what comes next. We read every one of them.